Smokey Joe, massive changes. We've got a brand new channel.
We've got a brand new channel, Rob, haven't we?
Yeah, obviously we've been doing loads of stuff together over the years, and we've started doing loads of these sort of interviews, sort of chats as well, podcast style stuff. And I've been putting it on my channel, you've been putting it on your channel.
Just a bit messy, wasn't it, if we're going to be
honest.
a
bit messy, but I tell you what, we've had some brilliant views.
Yeah, people love it.
Hopefully when we put it all in one place, people can find it a lot easier, and it's just going to be a lot easier for everybody. So this will go on one place, one channel. It's called Fish On with Rob and Joe. It's on YouTube, and also we're in the process of getting a podcast sorted. We've just got to get that sorted. I reckon within couple of days it's going to get sorted.
We've got that with the tech wizards now, haven't we? And
that's being sorted with the tech wizards, yeah. The technological genius that is me.
so you'll be able to hear us as well as see us if we get the podcast sorted. Subscribe, everybody. Get subscribing.
Yes, because this is obviously a new channel. We're getting some fantastic guests. Obviously, we had Simon Jones, we had Adam Richards, we had Nigel from Boston on the last show, and it was just, he let us into some real good insights into how things work, maybe behind the scenes. And a lot of people, obviously, they just go fishing. I know a lot of people want to maybe listen to some new tips or tactics.
Nice to get another side of things, though, isn't it?
It's brilliant to get another angle on the fishing industry and how fishing works behind the scenes. So I think we're tapping into all these little untold stories that you don't really read about in the mags, or you just don't really see really anywhere else. So, hopefully, like I said, it keeps us out of trouble, and hopefully you guys out there enjoy it as well.
But yeah, so hopefully that being in, this being in one place, or on YouTube anyway, will make it a lot easier for you guys to watch it. So
yes,
click subscribe, everybody, down below.
Please do. Big button there.
So Robert, what have we got in store for everyone today?
Well, hang on. Are you not going to talk about my hair?
I tell you what, that is a COVID cut in half. That is.
I've got a bit of an island there, but I think this shortcut, I think that'll do me once I get a bit of colour on my head.
Yeah, mine's maturing nicely.
Yeah, lovely head of hair you've got.
Look at this. This is the longest I've ever grown a beard.
You look like Daddy Pig from Peppa Pig.
That's the look I'm going for. So yeah, I might have a shave sometime soon.
Yeah, it's not the fullest beard in the world, is it?
No, it never will be, Rob.
No.
I didn't get pubes till I was about 30. So what have you been up to? Anything exciting?
What I've been up to is I've been similar to you, but probably just not as heavy involved. Bit of video stuff, bit of editing, and also you probably see behind me, we're still working on Monty's jungle.
Welcome to the jungle.
This is going to be my youngest son's bedroom when we're finished with it. And he's got his tree there, just behind me there, little cave going into.
I love that.
So we've been just putting the finishing touches to his tree. We've got some vines on it now, and we've got the tent up in the garden for the lads again because it's a beautiful day. Isn't it a shame that all last year and early this year it's peed it down every single day when we can go fishing? So we're sitting there getting piss wet through every single day. And then when we can't go fishing, it's the best weather that we've ever had.
Well, obviously, the troubles we have filming, because we both do it for a living pretty much now. And all winter, we've been trying to film new products and fishing videos. And the amount of days I've had in the wet has been frightening. And yet, from day one of lockdown to day whatever it is today, it's pretty much been good on it every single day. Like, you could have filmed something every day since.
The only saving grace I will say is, obviously, people would be really depressed, wouldn't they? If the weather was miserable and also they couldn't really go out and do what they wanted to do, people's morale would be pretty low. So I think that it's nice that the weather's nice, means that the kids can go out in the garden. Everyone gets a tiny bit of release, because I imagine that if you were all stuck in the house all day, you just drive yourself mad.
Yeah,
so,
it'd be hard work, mate, wouldn't it?
Fair enough, I think. Lovely weather. I'll tell you what, the stars at night, absolutely.
Oh, Rob. Thing is, I was into this anyway. Like, I'm a bit of a space geek. I love it. And everyone's obviously having a look up at the minute, aren't they? Because the skies are clear. Good for your soul, that is. Good for your mind and body, that is.
Well, I'll tell you what I used to do quite a lot of is, obviously, when I used to smoke
weed,
quite a bit of weed, you'd see a hell of a lot of shooting stars, because obviously your concentration levels were pretty good then. And you'd sit out at night and you'd be smoking spliff, and you'd see the stars at night was just absolutely beautiful. I know you love taking pictures of the stars and stuff, and I just whacked a GoPro out and just did a little time lapse.
Looked really good.
Yeah, it's not the nicest one in the world, pretty grainy, but you see plenty of shooting stars and you can see the sky moving. Just really nice, really interesting to see.
Yeah, it's nice. I went out there and sat there for a good, probably 45 minutes last night, taking pictures and stuff, just to pass the time and just a bit of fresh air, a bit of quiet. Look up, does you good. That does.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, nice. Time to relax. Right, let's kick off with some fishing talk.
Yeah.
Obviously,
one quick thing before we go in. One person asked Adam Richards about his keep net, how he manages his keep nets, because obviously he mentioned using 12 keep nets.
Yeah.
So I got him to send us a little video, and me and him did a little video explaining that. So we'll show him that at some point as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Okay. What, as a separate video or?
I'll just blend it in this.
Okay. Perfect. All right. So if they see that, because obviously for people that didn't know, we had Adam Richards on as a guest, top bagger, and he was talking about catching 500 pound of carp, and obviously that raises its questions itself, doesn't it? With kit and
keep nets.
Yeah, keep nets and where you put them and how you place them. So
do you have a look at that now?
Go on then, play it now.
So guys, we've got Adam Richards yet again. He's back, and one of the big questions we got, Adam, last week when you popped on to say hello was, how do you manage your keep nets? Because how many keep nets do you use at the Oaks? Because it must be loads.
The limit is £70. Some people try and push it, get somewhere near that, but for me, sort of £50 where I stopped, £55. So I think I ended up with 12 in that day.
Yeah. For what weight was it? 500 and something pound.
Sorry.
What weight was it? 500 and something pound.
Yeah, 580, 83 or 86. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, a lot.
A lot.
So how do you do it then? Because obviously having that amount of keep nets is a problem in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you can see here, we've got our normal keep net bar, modified a bit because at the minute my box is being powder coated and I've left the attachments on my other box. But obviously it would normally be attached properly. So that's perfect for your normal everyday match.
So what is that? That's the Preston one, is it? The one with the adjustable?
One.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the Preston one. I've added a couple of extra connectors on so I can put 4 or 5 nets on at the start if I want.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't have 10 or 12 nets on a bar like that because it'd have to be 15 foot long.
Yeah.
So what I do, start off with 3 or 4 normally. I might put another one on this end. Most important thing, first of all, is to think about where you're going to fish. So a lot of people catch sort of really close to themselves at the Oaks. For me, a lot of people fish down to the left-hand side, sort of a top kit, half a top kit on the bottom. For me, I aim to catch shallow, so I'll fish 5 metres in front and 4 or 5 metres down the edge, always to my right edge. So first thing is to make sure the nets I put in at the start all lay out round to my left. So I'll put this one in first, lay it round to my left, then I'll get the middle one round to the left past that one, and my outside one's the same.
Do you peg them out, or do you just lay them in?
Your nets when you're putting them in on top of your fish that you're catching. So I'll start off as normal. I've got my 50, 60 pound, 55 pound, whatever in one net, in the next. That's obviously when your problems start, you need another net. Now, everyone's got their own way of doing it. But for me, I just get this left-hand net, which is obviously the one out of the way of my catching area. And that's why these attachments are so good, so easy to take off. I unclip it. And then I just have a little bank stick here, sort of out of my way, but where I can reach it. Now, nearly all keep nets have a little gap, sort of near the connector block.
Yeah, see that, yeah.
See that okay?
Yeah, can you see that?
Yeah, so all I do then, take that one away, slip it over my bank stick where it obviously can't be pulled in, I can't lose it, it's out my way, forgotten about. And then this is always sort of my working connection. So just grab my next net, put it in gently. You might, at this point, you might just need to pull your other left-hand net about a bit just to give it a bit of slack so this one can sort of get past it. Straight on your connector. That's that net ready to go.
Perfect. So that the 2 that you've got there on your right-hand side, they stay there all match?
Yeah, they stay there all match. Don't bother moving them because if you start trying to move them, first of all, close to your catching area, which you don't really want. And secondly, you're pulling them over the top of your other nets and through your other nets, which starts moving them about, they jam up on each other. So I just tried to work with that one net, keep pulling it across, give myself a bit of slack, put it over my bank stick, nice and secure, I can't go anywhere. And I've always got this net to keep putting my fish in.
Amazing, amazing. So simple enough then, but just to give it a bit of thought when you're fishing.
Obviously, once you get to sort of 10 nets, 12 nets, they're still a little bit crammed, a little bit on top of each other, but that's as good a way as I've found.
Yeah.
Awesome. Obviously, I'd probably normally have another one on here as well, which gives me a little bit more space because that's one net that's not going to be put over on this bit.
Yeah, awesome. Nice one. That's nicely explained, I think. That answers that question nicely. Cheers, Adam.
No problem.
So, Rob, that's a lot of keep nets, isn't it?
it sounds like a lot of keep nets to me. I think the most I've ever used is 4.
Yeah, I've had a 5-dayer at the Glebe, but that was only because I lost my way.
Yeah.
And you know when you get, oh no, I don't know where I'm at now.
Because it's £100 limit at the Glebe, isn't it?
Yeah. But then you have your silvers.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know where to go.
I had £300 at the Glebe once and I got knocked back. So I must have had 4 nets in then. I had 4 nets in then. But yeah, it's a lot of bloody nets.
Yeah.
Fair play to it.
So
Right, I'll kick off with some questions then, Joe. You're the question master today.
Right, here's one then.
Because hang on, before you kick off with the questions, people have got to stay tuned because I've sorted us out a very, very special guest.
Yeah.
And he's going to pop up.
Is he controversial? Are we going to call him controversial?
No, I don't think he's controversial. I think he's very well informed.
He's a brilliant guy, and he's a great spokesperson for fishing.
Yes, he's a spokesperson. That's what we'll say. An ambassador and a spokesperson.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for this very, very special guest.
There's a lot for fishing, so let's when he pops up. Right, Joe, Rob, question please. You catch F1s on a method feeder using 0.17 diameter or clamps and bigger. You catch F1s in the margin using 0.17. So why, when you fish long pole, do you have to use 0.10 and 0.12?
Well, I think the answer to that is he'd catch more fish, more F1s, if he was using 0.12 on the method feeder.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think if and you know, you've noticed it, I've noticed it. If you were to fish your method feeder with lighter lines, you just get more bites.
Yeah.
And the problem is, though, obviously you lose more fish because you've only got such a short length of line there, a heavy feeder right above it, and you end up losing fish. So people have pushed it, and now we're all fishing sort of like 0.17, 0.18, 0.19 lines as a hook length. And you get your fish out, but do you hook as many fish? I'm not so sure. I think lighter and more supple the line, the better.
Yeah, I think if you're catching F1s down the edge on thick line, you're catching them by mistake almost, aren't you? You're not doing it by design. And yeah, I definitely think you'd catch more anyway, wouldn't you, on light tackle?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, use light tackle for F1s. So it's the way forward, isn't it?
It is the way forward. I think. What's your summer hook length material for F1s, Joe?
It'd be probably 0.12 AccuPower now. I'd probably use.
Yeah, I'd say 0.12. I'd use 0.12 as a hook length material. And I think method feeder, if I knew there was only F1s in a venue, I think you're looking at 0.14.
Yeah.
3 inch of 0.14 for F1s.
Yeah, a lot depends on your venue, doesn't it? Because like Packington Summers, for example, the F1s are massive there, and you catch them on the method all the time. But you've every chance of running into a 15-pounder. You've got to get them out, haven't you? So you've got to have a bit of venue knowledge there before.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So this is the next one. This is quite a nice one. He says loves the banter and the tips. Great job, fantastic guess. Cheers, Pete. He says,
Pete, is it my dad? Is it my dad?
No, Peter Dunraven. He says, would you like to see a set of rules and baits that would cover all commercial venues to make fishing more simple and more pleasurable?
Oh, how nice would that be? I don't think it'd work though, but how nice would that be?
Because it's like Whiteacres was when you used to have your strict 8-pint limit, and we all had the Whiteacres tubs, didn't we? And you had to take the tubs to your peg, and you kind of knew where you stood, didn't you?
Yeah, and it was enforced, which I think when you talk about rules on venues, especially bait rules, if you're coming up with a rule, it has to be enforced. So it would be, in an ideal world, it would be absolutely brilliant if we had one set of rules for every fishery up and down the country. Yeah. And I suppose we have got some, obviously, model match rules
Very loose though, Rob, isn't it?
It's very loose. The problem that we have is that every fishery is different. So a big venue like Boddington or Boston, or a venue that's got a lot of water there, can cope with obviously a lot of bait and different baits to
Lakeview,
a Lakeview or a Tunnel Bar Farm or a Snake Lake. So it's difficult to come up with those model match rules. And obviously, a lot of people like to fish different there. So
I was then about to say, there's that factor, isn't there? You know, a lot of people like to go and throw 5 or 6 pints of maggots in and fish shallow. Or they want to fish pellets, or they want to fish paste. And I think that's the beauty of UK fishing. People can go fishing where they want to and how they want to fish. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I
get the feeling that they are more set in their ways because they have to fish a certain style.
Yeah, exactly. I know people who like to go and fish stupid things like prawn and macaroni and cheese and you know, things like that. And it's a really people see that as a pleasure angler's style of fishing. But I know people have used that sort of thing in matches and done really well.
I've got a great prawn story.
Have you? Go on, tell us your prawn story.
When Andy Power won the Knockout Cup, the Drennan Knockout Cup back in something, of course, you've won.
Yeah. Andy Power, I was in the Dockload when Andy Power won it, wasn't I?
Yeah. And
a wheel spun out the car park.
Yeah, you did. You didn't stay for a beer that night, did you?
No, I didn't.
Anyway, so we went to do, and part of that was doing a continuous series afterwards in the Match Fishing magazine. And the first one was in the winter. It was waggler fishing at Viaduct, and we couldn't catch a fish. And it was one of those days when you think, oh, we're just not on the fish. We're going to struggle, probably catch one fish and get a feature out of it. Anyway, lo and behold, there's this perch angler in the corner fishing prawns, and he's catching loads of carp. No perch, loads of carp. Powers went up and grabbed some, chucked the prawn out on a bomb, and caught carp after carp.
I've heard a similar story of an angler fishing. Remember Rycroft, where I used to fish those silverfish matches?
Yeah.
An angler used to fish his prawns there and clean up in the winter. He used to fish prawns on a waggler and clean up.
Fishy and smelly, aren't they? And soft, and we love them, don't they?
They're beautiful.
Full of goodness.
Yeah, beautiful. Imagine those ground up into like a sludge and added to your ground bait. I mean, how many fish would come into your peg then?
Yeah.
No, but we don't try these sort of things, do we? We ought to try these things when we can get out.
But anyway, go back to the unified set of rules.
Yeah. I just don't think it'd work. I think there's so many fisheries now that if you don't like a particular fishery, you just vote with your feet and you just don't go there. It's a shame for obviously guys chasing the big qualifiers because they have to change the kit over, or they have to think about different rules on every venue. And I've known people get disqualified from big matches, big qualifiers, not because they've tried to cheat, but because they've
had something left.
They've maybe had some bait left over from the match before, or
honest mistakes. And
they're not really harming anything with what they're doing, but they've contravened the rules on that particular venue. And it would be lovely to have one set of rules, but I think that's a fairy tale. You know, that's the fairy tale for all as anglers, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Jeff Ortega says, love the virtual festival concept. Huge applause to everyone involved in that. So
Simon Jones, a couple of weeks ago, his virtual festival.
And he says, could we see some versions of the overshotted rigs? Now, I haven't really got much experience with the overshotted rigs, but I'm pretty sure it's just, for the most part, a BB shot 4 inches from the hook, isn't it? I know some people are using, a bit more delicate than that, but I think if you wanted to go and try it for the first time, a BB 4 inches from the hook isn't going to catch loads of fish with that.
The trick is with an overshotted rig is I like to have a float on at least at the start of the session because you can read what's going on in your peg. So if you are fishing away and you start getting line bites, you're going to see them with a float on. And you're going to just read your float a little bit. So you'll sort of understand where the depth that the fish are feeding at, and you'll be able to read your peg. Then once you've settled on a particular depth, that's when you can fish your overshotted rig or your direct rigs with no float on the line. And everything, obviously, the fish just pull the elastic out. The origins of it were probably, as Joe said, just put a BB shot on your line, 4 inch from the hook, set that length of line to the depth that you know you're going to catch your fish at, dangle your pole over the water, maybe a few taps with your pole, feed a bit of bait, the elastic gets pulled out. Yeah. But I think it has moved on from that. And this is where, as in all methods, quite a bit of skill comes into it with maybe some different shotting patterns. But generally, you want something that's going to keep your lines tight between your pole tip and your hook bait. So when a fish takes the bait, it's bang against your pole tip, you're hooking your fish. But it's getting that crucial depth bang on. You know, from the start, you're going to have to try and do it with a pole float to read where those fish are in your peg. And then obviously you can put your direct rig out and start slaying them. That's the idea anyway.
Yeah, it's I think it certainly is a starting point anyway. You can't really go wrong with that, can you?
No. If you go on, sorry.
No, I think you know, if you just wanted to try an overshotted rig for the first time ever, Jeff, I think stick the BB on, nice and close to your hook, 4 inches away, and you'll catch loads of fish on that.
I think as well, obviously it depends whether you're fishing in a match situation or not, because I look at some of the things that we use as match anglers, and okay, sometimes I'll complicate things every now and again, which it does work, but fish aren't that daft. Fish aren't that clever. If they're not pressurized, you can catch them on all sorts of things. When you know, as I say, I've been looking at a lot of. We've all had loads of time to watch old videos on YouTube. I've been watching some of the rigs that these guys use. Only maybe 5-10 years ago, when anglers maybe weren't as informed as we are now, and the kit that they're using. Some of these guys to catch specimen fish, the rigs are really crude compared to what we're using now, and it's because the fish aren't so pressured, and you can catch them easier.
Yeah, it's moved on so much, hasn't it, fishing? Here's one for you, because you did a great video making your little feeder links. Is he coming on, is it?
I'm going to get him on in a second.
Is it a second, or have we got time for one more little chat?
Yeah, go on. We could do. Yeah, go on.
So you did a great little video on feeder links the other day, making feeder links on your channel.
Yeah, get over and watch it, everybody.
I've spoke quite a bit about using feeder links. I know Steve Ringer posted the other day about using them, and yet time and time again we get questions: why are people using feeder links? Shall we have a little feeder link chat?
Let's have a feeder link chat, shall we? So, for me, a feeder link gives me just that bit of freedom. You're out of drink.
Yeah.
You're out of drink. Go shout out for another drink.
It's all right.
A feed link gives me that little bit of freedom that fish, especially smaller fish, I think that a smaller fish can pick up your bait, shake its head really violently, and it shakes its head that fast that it can get rid of the hook bait pretty quick as soon as it feels the weight of that feeder. But with a link, it just gives you a little bit more freedom and a little bit more loose line that the fish can't do that. It can't use the weight of the feeder to rid itself of the hook bait. So when you're fishing without a link, if you were to just put a snap link on, which is what I do a lot of the time when I fish for bigger fish, bream or carp, anything over £1 to be fair. When you're fishing with a snap link for smaller fish, you'll get a lot of really sharp, fast bites. You'll pick up and there's not a fish on. That's because the fish has picked up the bait, shook its head, got rid of the bait straight away against the weight of the feeder. But with a link in place, you'll get more of a slow nod as the fish is on, because it's almost pulling against slack line and the quiver tip rather than against the feeder. And then when you pick up the rod to strike into the fish, you're not having to pull through the feeder as much. You're pulling straight into the fish because the link obviously collapses. That's why I end up using a link, and I'm guessing that's why you use a link.
Exactly the same.
A lot of people, you talk about this, because a lot of people used to think it was because you didn't get tangles with them, but
that's a load of nonsense, isn't it?
That's a load of rubbish.
Because they actually cause tangles rather than. But obviously, you fish to international rules a lot, so you want to use it throughout your normal fishing as well. I actually like using them anyway, because I think you don't lose as many fish. But I just think that's the big difference for me. If you set a normal rig up and then a rig with a link up side by side and fish them for skimmers and whatnot, it's just totally different, isn't it? Is it here?
No.
You've gone very serious looking. Stern.
No, something popped up on me.
I'm only talking about feeder links.
Yeah, well, it's annoyed me. The feeder link side of it, yes, I use feeder links up to 50 metres, 60 metres.
Beyond that, it's hard work, isn't it?
Beyond that, because you're going to get tangles. Now, the other rig that we all tend to use is a helicopter rig, where you place a quick link on your main line, sandwich it between two float stops, and then your bomb is attached to the actual main line, and you attach your hook length to the quick link, and your hook length spins round. I'm not explaining it very well, but it's a helicopter rig. Your hook length spins around the main line as you cast out, so you get fewer tangles basically. Mm-hmm. That's a great rig, but it's fixed. So when you're playing a fish, it feels so awkward. It feels like you're going to lose the fish all the time because you feel like the feeder's penduluming against the fish, and it just feels so awkward. Whereas with a link, because the feeder slides up the line, you feel so direct to the fish. You feel like the feeder's not going to bounce the hook out of the fish.
Yeah.
That's why I like a link as opposed to a helicopter rig. But it's getting that balance between chucking a long way, because links can tangle. They can tangle up.
Yeah, and you know as much as me and everybody else, the amount of times you've gone out and had an absolute nightmare over link, but you know over the years sort of refined your setup to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes. Right. Our special guest has popped up. He's here. Now this guy, I'm hoping he can hear us.
Oh my God.
He looks beautiful. One of the best looking guys in angling.
He's just been in the gym, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's just been in the gym. One of the best looking guys in angling. Now this chap, not everyone at the minute has got all of the answers to our current situation with fishing and fishing related subjects. But if anyone has, this guy's got more than most. Rob Hughes, my oracle, I don't know if he's everyone's oracle, but he's my oracle on fishing, is here to join us and talk to us all about fishing and what he's been doing.
How are we doing, Rob?
Can you hear us, Rob?
Yeah, I've got you loud and clear. Yeah, fine.
Superb.
How are you doing, mate?
I'm very impressed with Joe behind Joe, to be honest.
Well, I've just tried to set one up, but I couldn't. So I've got my son's mural on the small.
Yeah, you look like you've stuffed an ostrich or something in a plastic volcano behind you.
No, that is. I've just explained that. That's my lad's new tree house.
Ah, right.
This room's in the process of being decorated.
Yeah, I know exactly how you feel. I've got tree houses all over my place.
Come on, Rob. When are we going to go fishing again?
Ooh, there's $1 million question everybody wants to know about, isn't it?
Straight into the deep end, isn't it, that?
Yeah, get straight in. Absolutely. Why not? Let me reverse that. Should we?
No.
Why?
Just think there's too many situations where you could come into contact with other people at the minute.
So this is the big question. There's loads of people out there that say, look, we want to go fishing. We should go fishing. Nobody, and I mean nobody, will convince me that fishing isn't a great thing to do for social isolation. You know, carp fishing in particular, I'm a carp angler. We bugger off in the middle of nowhere and sit on our own. And we do that for as long as we possibly can. We're self-sufficient. Yes, we've got to go to the supermarket. Yes, we might have to get some fuel, but there's a lot of people that have to do that anyway. So it's minimal risk to be able to do it. So nobody will tell me that carp fishing isn't going to be a great thing to do. Let's also think about the mental well-being side of things, because people being cooped up are going to go absolutely potty. You know, everybody wants to go. There's also a benefit to the fishery, that having people on the fishery is hopefully going to prevent either the crime or the theft issues that are going on. There are so many things that mean we should be fighting to go. However, we have to do it at the right time. And that's the key issue. What is the right time? And the right time is when the government has enough information to be able to understand whatever it is. Now, golf could be the same as fishing. Football's unlikely to be. But there are a number of things that you could do. Surfing.
There's loads of pastimes and hobbies that people do that are semi-solitary. So
yes,
cycling. I know you can do a few of these things already, but cycling, rambling, walking, canoeing, surfing, golf, all these sort of things, I'm sure they've got to be the first things that get relaxed.
Yeah, so I did a live on Friday, and it was interesting that there was a lot of interesting reaction on that. I think there were a few people on there that, because I said there was some really important news, they thought it might be a case that I was going to announce they could go fishing. Now, I did talk in my preamble about how I was going to give some news about what was happening behind the scenes, and this is the key thing. It's very important for people to know how these decisions are made. So let's have a look. Who's going to make the decision to allow us to go fishing? It's definitely not the fisheries, it's not the angling clubs, it's not us, it's not the police, it's not authority, It's the government. Simple as that. The government will make that decision. The head man at the government is Boris Johnson. So let's start with him. Boris is going to tell us as and when we can all start again. But Boris doesn't really know that much about fishing, so he listens to his cabinet. So he's got a cabinet of advisors: Home Office on Home Affairs, Minister for Education, Minister for Sport, Minister for Media, all of these things. There are individual heads of departments, just in exactly the same way as we have individual heads in business, etc., etc. So what he's got to do is, before he says, yes, let's go fishing, he's got to analyse every single thing, or his departments have got to analyse every single thing to make sure that it won't make the problem worse. And that's the key thing at the moment. We've clearly got to contain the situation that we're in. We don't want it to get worse. They will have a strategy and a plan. Now, sometimes you'll hear on the news people talking about models. One model suggests this, one model suggests that. Now, they're not going and ringing up Claudia Schiffer, or Schaefer, or whatever her name is, and asking for her opinion. It's not that sort of model. It's a business model or a scientific model that's put together by experts. There is something called SAGE. Now, SAGE is the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies. So whenever there is an emergency, I thought you were looking at your model then behind. SAGE is the Scientific Advisory Group for Emergencies. And what they have is loads and loads of experts that will look at important matters. So, for example, the doctors will be advising how they think the spread will go. The psychologists will be talking about how the country will be affected. The economists will be talking about how financially there might be repercussions if we do or don't do something. Now, ultimately, information that we're giving, including down as far as my lowly level, and if you look at the chain, if that is Boris, I am off the bottom of the screen somewhere on the floor, so far down. But if we can give some information that's useful and pass it back up there, it might help. I'll go back to my first thing though. When should we go? It's all very well saying, right, we should go, but we have to ask ourselves, should we go at the moment? And I think the answer is the first 3 weeks, absolutely no, because it had to be a case of stage one, right, containment. After that initial containment, then what you do is you assess it and you assess where you are. The assessment was, let's lock down again for another 3 weeks and then reconsider again. And I think because people are on the whole behaving themselves, it will be a case of let's look now to see what we can start people doing. Because let's face it, the world is going to go mad soon. If you have another 3 weeks,
I think people know
the
crack now, and people are understanding more what's going on, and people are using their own brains, and they're realising this is serious. I think for that first 3 weeks, okay, there was a bit of, God, what's happening here? We don't know how to act. We don't know what to do. Can we do this? Can we do that? So basically the government had to say, no, this is what you have to do. Basically nothing. Stay where you are. Don't do anything. You're not allowed to do this, not allowed to do that. But now as time's gone on, we're sort of understanding how important everything is at the minute, how important this social distancing is, and how important it is to not do things that maybe you don't have to do, or just things that are going to put someone or yourself at risk. So people are understanding the situation now. Whereas I think, like you say, first 3 weeks, I'm not so sure people did understand the situation to the full extent.
Well, you've only got to look at the confusion about whether you can go to work or not. You know, how much confusion there was about, can we go to work? And originally it was, yes, you can go to work, and construction sites were working, then they were stopped, and then some construction sites were open and everybody was told to stop, and then actually a few people could start again. And then offices, are you allowed to go? And it's only essential work that should happen, and it's only key workers that should go. And actually the law is quite clear. If you look at what the law says, I look straight to the root of the law, because if you can find the law first, that's the rule. And then after that, you're looking at what people's interpretations are of it. So the law as it stands, as was passed, and it may well be amended, because this is one of the other things. This thing's spinning so quickly. The words unprecedented have been used so often that what was right yesterday might not be right today, but what's wrong today might actually be right tomorrow. Because as more information comes in, things change all the time. So let's have a look as a prime example at exercise. You must not go out at all. Then suddenly it's, well, actually you can go out to exercise. What can you do for exercise? You can walk, you can bike, or you can run. So then what happened was people thinking, well, I'm walking, so I'll drive somewhere. So immediately that was pulled back. You're not allowed to drive anywhere to exercise. You should exercise from your own doorstep. actually that seems to have been relaxed a little bit now. So even though the law hasn't been changed, the police work, there's the chief of police basically looks at what policy can be made, what can happen, and then looks at what they will and won't enforce. Now, Wales are very different from England as a prime example, because they're a principality, they've got a different legal system. So if you go out without good reason in a vehicle there, you can get a ticket straight away. They're running roadblocks all the time. People there have been prosecuted for going fishing. Actually, in England, that's not necessarily the case. You shouldn't travel, but you can. And this is another thing that I think is really important to remember. There's can you and should you. And just because you can, it doesn't necessarily mean you should. So let's have a look. Now, let's grab a real prickly subject that the Environment Agency and the Angling Trust and the police and all of us are talking about. Can you actually fish? Is fishing illegal at the moment? And fishing isn't actually illegal. However, recreational fishing is outlawed by both police, by Environment Agency, but it's a government directive from the Sports Minister. All of the governing bodies of sport have been told, now's not the time to look for excuses. Now's the time to play the game. Don't try and find a loophole to allow you to do what you want to do for the time being. Just back off, calm down, and let's just stop doing everything for the moment so we can assess exactly where we are. And that's what's happened originally. Then what will happen is there will be gradual releases of things. And again, one of the points for my live the other day was to talk about two really important things. Firstly, a little bit like what we're doing now, to talk about how these things happen, because Boris isn't just going to open the door and go, right, crack on everybody, back to normal. You know, you can go down the pub and reinfect each other. Fishing is fine. There has to be a number of systems that have to take place before he can allow things to happen, because if he does allow it and there's a problem, obviously, it could be very costly in terms of life, in terms of finance, and also the backlash later on. Because let's face it, nobody really appreciates what authority do the majority of the time. And by authority, I mean the police. People are always complaining about what the police do, what the Environment Agency do or don't do. All sorts of authority gets it all the time, because I think a lot of the time I don't think it's mistrustful of authority, but we expect certain things should be done. And if they're not done right, then we have a grumble about it. You know, and again, I'll flip it back to you guys there. And I'm going to do a survey on my Facebook and social media posts. And I'll be really interested to see if you would do one as well. And perhaps some of the guys that are watching this can give us some feedback. Firstly, we're trying to put in place, and when I say we, the Angling Trust in particular, and I'm working with them, we're trying to put in place a system for government that they can be happy that when they say yes, the doors can open, fishing can be at the front of the queue. It's absolutely vital for a lot of people, for the business, for industry, but more to the point, for the people that want to go fishing, for their mental health, for their own sanity, and just quite frankly, because we all think that we should be able to do it quite correctly. It's important that fishing is at the front of the queue, because so often fishing gets neglected. And this is one of my bugbears about my sport. You know, whatever I say and do, you might agree with me or disagree with me, but actually I have got fishing in my heart. If you chop my head off, I will bleed angling. It's always been like that. I've had all sorts of things that I could do in my life. I choose to fish because I love the sport. So anything that we can do to protect the sport and help the sport going forwards, I personally will always try and do. So if anybody's critical of me, just remember what my intention is in the first place. You might not agree with me, but this is what I want to do.
Yeah, I just want to touch on while we're talking about that. A lot of people seem to think that you are Mr. Angling Trust, when that's not necessarily the case.
Not at all. No,
you don't get paid by the Angling Trust or anything like that. It's just that the Angling Trust at the minute is our only voice. And
exactly.
They need, maybe, and this is coming from me, maybe they haven't got the knowledge of our styles of fishing. They certainly didn't in the past. So they need someone to consult. They need some input from somewhere so they can pass on information to someone higher than them. And obviously you just have a reasonable relationship with them. So they ask you, or you have they consult you on certain issues.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. My role with the Angling Trust is that I am a consultant. So I get consulted in primarily with regards to carp fishing, but around all sorts of other things, because, you know, let's have a look at where the Angling Trust is at the moment. We've got a new chief executive. He's a course angler, which is absolutely fantastic, because I think in course angling previously, we've looked at the Angling Trust and there's been a fairly hefty element of fly and game anglers in there, or so it would seem from our point of view.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know what you guys think. I get the general feeling that the majority of match anglers think that the Angling Trust is something that they have to join to be able to fish certain matches. From carp anglers' point of view, they don't really engage with the Angling Trust that much because there's never been that much crossover. For some reason, carp angling has been seen to be problem causing as opposed to helping. And, you know, for us, everybody has issues, but for us, it's otters and poaching that are one of the key things that needs to be addressed. And if authority addresses that, then they'll get more support. But either way, whatever the situation, there is a little bit of distance between what the trust was and the various different degrees of or disciplines of angling. And it's very interesting because match anglers think it's a tax, carp anglers think they don't do anything, game anglers surprisingly think that it's all match orientated, and sea anglers think, well, what do they do for us?
Yeah.
So every single discipline doesn't really support the trust. Now, I you know, we can turn around and go, well, stuff the trust, why should we bother? The reason we should bother is because situations like this, routes to government, the government will look at the appointed national governing body. And whether you like it or not, that's the Angling Trust. Yeah. Now, the problem the Angling Trust has is it's a members' organisation. And this is an interesting point as well. There's 47 national governing bodies. In 46 of them, if you want to compete or if you want to participate at any competition level, you have to join the national governing body. Guess which one you don't? Yeah. So, you know, and there's 47, but 46, you've got to be a part of British cycling. You've got to be, you know, yes, you can recreationally swim. You don't have to join the National Swimmers Union.
If you want to compete in any swimming competitions, you've got to be part of their swimming.
Then you're part of that. And that's why we don't have the funding structure. That's why we have to look at getting Environment Agency money and getting Sport England money, getting all these other things in, because we don't have our own self-funding structure. And it's gone on for such a long period of time that, you know, whether it will ever happen, I don't know, because there seems to be this inherent dislike from lots of different disciplines. But what people have just got to get over is that they're what we've got.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, I would much rather help and try and make it better than sit on the sidelines and just dismiss it or disrespect it or slag it off or say whatever you want about it. You know, let's try and help solve the problem as opposed to just ignore it. And just to reiterate on your other point there, do I work for the trust? Absolutely not. I'm engaged as a consultant for the trust, and I'm also an ambassador for the trust because I try and promote the good stuff they do, because I would love everybody to support it, but I understand why they don't. And equally, one of the things that I've said to the trust is that until you get rid of the bad smell that's around you, you're never going to get that support. And it's very interesting, some of the conversations that I have with some people at various different levels there, because there's things that we don't want to hear that they're saying about angling, and there's actually things that they don't want to hear that angling are saying about them. And it's the same for the Environment Agency. But at some stage, somebody's got to try and bridge that gap. For my sins, I've tried to do it, and occasionally I just think, you know what? I don't know why I bother. Yeah. So it's you know, I'm not paid. It's all voluntary. I do it because I want to try and help. For years, one of the lads in membership was saying, when are you going to join? When are you going to join? When are you going to join? And I said, well, when you start doing something, I'll join. And, you know, they were desperate to get me to join. And in the end, I said, right, I'll tell you what, I will join and we'll make it public that I join. But I will only stay a member as long as I think that you're doing something. And if I think that you're letting us down, I will, as publicly as I've joined, I'll leave you. And I don't know what else I can do.
Yeah.
And I think if more of us, as in the guys that are in the profile, could actually put input in, and also they listen to it, which is the key thing, because how often do you have to say something that they don't listen to and eventually you get fed up? And this is one of the criticisms that the Environment Agency get all the time. They either don't listen or don't know. So we need to have that input in there. But you know, that's quite a long rant there. But basically the situation is that we have to feed information through the trust to the government to put together a realistic package to be able to start again.
So is that happening then, Rob? Are they speaking to the government now? Is it?
They're always in touch with the government. Yeah. They're in touch with the government all the time. One of the key things is timing. You know, it's got to be done at the right time, because, you know, if central government are really worried about some major issues like personal protection equipment for key workers and health services, and that's the thing at the front. If we go in elbows up going, hang on a second, I'll not want to go fishing.
Yeah, yeah.
then what they're going to do is they're going to say, rock to the back of the queue, don't piss us off, excuse my language, we'll tell you when we're ready.
Yeah.
But if we can be sensible and put a sensible package and wait for their staged relaxation, and one of the things that I want to put forward is the mental well-being side of things. It is very, very well proven that fishing is a good thing for people to do for their mental health.
Oh, it's got to be massive.
I've done a lot of research. Yeah, I've actually got research from a professor from King's College, and he has actual proof. And this is where you need urology in your certificate, and people will turn around and go, overpaid idiots in suits. Unfortunately, you need an overpaid idiot in a suit for another overpaid idiot in a suit to listen to him, and we're governed by people in suits. So, you can have your opinion. Unfortunately, you need an ology for it to be credible. So if we get these people turning around, and this professor, he's actually got a load of research about stress level being reduced if you spend time in green and, most importantly for us, blue spaces. So people talk about going into countryside, but actually we're not just talking about that. We're talking about green and blue spaces. And, this evidence going there, it's very, very helpful. There is, if we can be sensible and practice it in the right way, social distancing measures, yes, we can do it. Can anybody sensibly argue that one of us going fishing now is any less risky than one of us going shopping?
I think fishing, and you've touched on it, if you can social distance correctly, follow all your guidelines that obviously we've all been set out to follow, everyone must be sitting at home. Everyone's got cabin fever. Everyone's itching to get out and do something. What could be better than going fishing? What could be better than going fishing?
Nothing.
Bit of time in the countryside, on your own, middle of nowhere. It's fantastic. And even for us as match anglers, look, I'm under no illusion that matches are going to be starting anytime soon. But we like going fishing. Just because we've got match kit and a box and poles and all that kit, doesn't mean we can't go fishing and enjoy it. We want to go fishing.
My only worry with that is, and it's something that Rob alluded to earlier, it's great having this beautiful image in your head that we're all going to go sit by a big lake to ourselves. But let's be truthful here. Most people go to the local little commercial fishery, don't they? Do you know what I mean?
So,
as nice as it is
why
to think.
Why don't we put a guideline in saying, right, you can go fishing. Let's either take matches away for the time being because they're gatherings rather than individuals. So matches would possibly be stage 2. And I would say, right, if you are getting to a match situation, stage 2 would be you can have a 12 peg knockup.
Yeah.
Because then you've got that element of competition. So, 12 people, let's work the draw system out. Loads of the matches originally were saying, right, we can do our draws like this. We'll do a virtual draw. You don't need to come in. One person away will step back. There's all sorts of ways that you can do it. We've just got to put that in place. And then what we've all got to do is we've got to make sure that it self-polices. But just going back to the fishing, let's have a look at carp fishing. We'll take the different disciplines now. And this is one of the problems that has to be looked at. Because what I found from that live the other night was that unless there is something in it for that person, they're not interested.
Yeah.
And it's just a load of crap. There was nothing in it for me. Well, you know what? I'm looking at the bigger picture as opposed to just what's in it individually. So let's have a look at going carp fishing first, because that's in it for me. Brilliant. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. One bloke in a swim, closest bloke's 50 yards away. Don't come into contact unless you need a photograph taking or a weight witnessing. And when you take a photograph, you're 2 meters away anyway. Absolute winner, no brainer. Let's allow fishing. But that's not fishing, that's carp fishing. Okay. So then let's have a look at your lads fishing. Let's have a look at commercial fishing. Well, if we can say you keep 10 meters between each other and you self-enforce that, and the commercials self-enforce that as well. Or alternatively, and there was a fishery that came online yesterday, actually said they were open. They got permission from trading standards. Don't know whether you saw that. No. Place in Flintshire. Absolutely crazy, because yes, they tried to open, but actually it's illegal to drive anywhere. So they were encouraging people to commit a criminal offence. And actually anywhere that you can stay over has to be shut anyway, under the regulations under the COVID laws. So if we said, right, 5 meters apart or 10 meters apart, work out the draw system so you don't go anywhere near, actually that could potentially come in.
I think this is what we touched on earlier, that we've had 3 weeks or 4 weeks now where people are starting to understand how serious this is. And once you're allowed out fishing, I think people will understand it and they'll work it out for themselves. I think take the match situation out of it, because matches, okay, you can come into contact with people. But I
think we know that
now.
Yeah.
If you turn up to a commercial fishery and there's 15 blokes already on the lake, you go onto a different lake, or you try and go into a corner where there's no one else there, or you try not to walk past a load of people. Everyone's understanding now of the situation. And I think that's what all these government guidelines have encouraged, the fact that we all understand the situation better now, rather than trying to take the piss and trying to get away with as much as we can.
Well, they'll have had 6 weeks of practice.
Yeah,
Everybody's had 6 weeks of practice.
What I'm trying to say is we're not fighting the government anymore. We're not fighting the legislations. We're actually with them and understanding the legislations now. So we're with them. You touched on, because go on, Rob. Just before you finish.
Go on. I'll flip it. I'll flip it now and cause a problem, because we've seen that carp fishing isn't a problem. Yeah. So we should allow that. And we've seen that actually, if it's practiced right, commercial fisheries shouldn't be a problem. Rivers are closed at the moment, but actually when they're open, they wouldn't really be that much of a problem. Natural venues, club venues, hopefully it'll be self-policing. They're not normally that busy anyway, and there's plenty of space. So hopefully that will be a little bit better. Park lakes might be an issue.
Yeah.
Because if you allow fishing in park lakes where there's public access, suddenly the golfer or the footballer or someone else goes, well, hang on a second, to fishing to lag, why can't I do mine? Yeah. Stuff it, I'm going. Yeah. But now let's have a look at sea fishing, because we haven't touched on that. And if we look at sea fishing, suddenly what you get is the family sticking the bucket, the spade, the kids, the dog, the missus, and everything in the car, rattling themselves down to Weymouth with one fishing rod in there, spending the day on the beach, going to prom, doing all the other bits and bobs there. I'm going fishing, mate. Yeah. Are you really? So it's
not black and white.
Say again, sorry?
It's not black and white, is it?
It's not. No, yeah, that's it. It's that sensibility side of things. Where do you draw the line? So if a sensible package can be put together with reasonable guidelines, then when the next review comes along, and remember they review every 3 weeks. So we had our first 3 weeks. No, you can't do anything. They then got to the second 3 weeks, and it was, you know what? We're not going to do anything different. We're going to carry on doing the same thing. Now, they could have wound it up a little bit and said, right, nobody's going out anywhere, because there's been too many people taking the piss over bank holiday, so therefore we're going to shut everything down. But they didn't, because they said, look, we accept that you're doing more or less the right thing, so we're going to keep it as it is, and we'll review again in another 3 weeks. And then within that first week, there was actually discussions then about the fact that, you know what, you can now drive to exercise. You don't need to exercise from home. You can now go to the allotment. Just if anybody's watching this and you live in Wales, don't drive anywhere. Okay, Welsh regulations are different from English regulations. But yes, suddenly you can drive. Now, the guideline there, the law hadn't changed, but the guideline was, as long as you're driving for less time than you're exercising, the police aren't going to have an issue with that. So you're allowed to exercise for an hour. That hasn't changed. So you can drive there. Now, question one, and here's another one as well. If you can drive for an hour and exercise for an hour, is it an hour there and an hour back, which is 2 hours driving, or is it half an hour?
Yeah.
So, Rob, it's so messy. And I think, as I keep going back, we all know the game. We all know it deep down, whether we're doing the right thing or not now. We all, I think we all do. Any clever person out there, or someone who's half clever, knows whether what they're doing is acceptable. And also, if they were to do it and someone else was to follow suit, and maybe 100 other people to follow suit, would that be acceptable? And that's the problem that we're up against. Because one person doing these things is not a problem. It's when the 100 people follow you because they see you doing it and think, actually, I fancy doing a bit of that. Looks okay, he's doing it. And then they follow you. And they can't do that.
Well, it depends. If they do it properly, there's no reason why they can't do it if they do it properly. You could have 100 people going out and doing it, but they've got to do it in accordance with whatever those social distancing regulations are, whatever the safety side of things are. Yeah. And it's about having a safe policy. So basically, people have got to prove themselves first, as they've done over the last few weeks. Can we be sensible? On the whole, we can. Right? If we can be sensible, can we be let out to do some things? And, you know, that's my view. The big question is, when's it likely to be?
I know. Well, we've done all this surmising. When do you think? Give us a date.
Can't. I've got an inkling as to when the procedures are going on, but unfortunately,
it's too open in it at the moment. Still,
Well, it's not down to us. You see, look, China, just as a prime example, China locked everybody down, and then they opened it back up again, and then there was a bit of a raise in deaths and infections over there. And one thing that I would say, there's people desperate. They're all getting fed up. If you've done your job properly and you've locked yourself down, you've kept out of the way. Actually, you shouldn't be exposed to it. You're not going to see it. You're not going to know anything about it. So as a result, it's not necessarily that real. What's real is what you're doing, but the disease or the repercussions from that disease aren't necessarily real because you haven't been affected. They haven't touched you. You read it and you worry about it, but you haven't seen it yet. And this is one of the really, really scary things. Let's hope that you don't see it. And let's look at the best case scenario and the worst case scenario of allowing you to go fishing. The best case scenario is you get out of the house and you go out and you have a nice day's sport. That's the best day scenario, isn't it? You think, brilliant, I'm back. I've had a really, really good day. What's the worst case scenario? Now, you could say the worst case scenario is death. And I'll leave a little pause there. If the worst case scenario is death, then that is frightening. And remember, death might not be your death. It might be the death of someone close to you. Yeah. And can you imagine the rest of your life thinking, if I hadn't gone fishing, I wouldn't have caught it and brought it back. And another family member might have caught it from me.
Yeah, all for a couple of hours on the bank.
Yeah. So, make no mistake about it. It's a very, very serious position. Everybody watching this knows what we're talking about anyway, but it's always useful to reiterate some of these points. And, as much as we all want to do these things, it's got to be the right time in the right way.
Yeah. Right.
That's one of the keys.
We're touching on time. So talk about this week, Angling Times. You've talked about, because we mentioned the Environment Agency 5 or so minutes ago, rod licenses. Now, obviously, rod licenses, they're an annual thing now. You be obviously when I first started fishing, when we all started fishing, it was you bought your rod license. What was it? June the 16th, was it? Or when did you buy it? You bought it.
Yeah,
it lasted for the season. That was it.
It was a 9-month one, wasn't it?
Yes,
it was 9
June
months.
the 16th, and then it lasted. So, but now everyone's on an annual basis. I imagine most people's licenses, they run out sometime in April time. And you see the odd person, he's talking about, I'm going to get my money back for my license, or boycott, actually lobbying to get his money back for his license. And you've done a piece on this in the Angling Times this week explaining why those sort of people have just got the wrong end of the stick totally.
Yeah, that's it. And again, this was part of the live that I did the other night, and it provoked quite a lot of controversy, and it's quite interesting. And I do it because I want to create discussion. That's one of the reasons why I've got my column. It isn't necessarily just to be controversial, but it is to raise discussion. And it's to raise discussion for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's very useful for the Environment Agency to hear what people are thinking about them. Because if they don't hear it, if they just ignore it, they're not going to know. And if they don't know that people either like or dislike it, how are they going to change what they do? A lot of the time they might just think, well, we've got this job to do. It doesn't matter what people think. This is how we're going to do it. But actually, if you're a situation like fishing where you are asking people to give you something, then they want to know what they're going to be getting back in return. So let's look at the rod license. The Angling Times piece was headlined by the Angling Times, "Do the right thing." Now, I think that it perhaps should have had a question mark on the end of it. And Joe, as a journalist, you'll recall how important headlines are. Yeah. And just missing a question mark off the end of something makes the difference between...
Totally transform what you're trying to say.
Precisely. Yeah. So I would say that the feature should have been, or the headline should have been, "Do the right thing, question mark." Because my view is, and I'll state my view, and exactly the same as if you vote Labour, you believe one way the country should be managed, and if you vote Conservative, you believe it should be managed in a different way. There isn't necessarily a right or wrong answer. Those people truly believe that that is the right way to run the country. What do I think? Well, my rod licence was due for renewal on the 1st of April. I always renew it on the 1st of April because I know very well that when I'm ready to go, it's there. I don't necessarily always go in April. I might buy it, if this clock shutdown hadn't happened, I might buy it and not go till May anyway because I'm busy, but I've got it. So in my head, it's always there. It's always ready to go. Now, the 2 rod license is 56.8 pence, I think, is it? There or thereabouts, 57p a week. So I just had to give my head a little bit of a shake, where if you've bought your rod license on the 1st of April, as it would have happened, because remember this only came in last year, didn't it?
Yeah.
So 1st of April would have been the first time that you could have renewed it. The lockdown happened, March the 16th, 18th, something like that,
Something
maybe
like
the 20th.
in that ballpark.
So off that old rod license, if you didn't renew your new one, off your old rod license, you've lost 2 weeks, £1.14. Do you really, like, just financially, the costs of administering a return for £1.14 is more than the £1.14. Do you really think they should be given a refund? And I just think it's crazy that people would want a refund on that, because they might not have gone anyway. Now, the flip side of that is, well, we've paid for something that we haven't got. If we hadn't got a rod license for the 2 weeks and we got caught without that rod license just for that last 2 weeks, they'd have been down on us like a ton of bricks. And I get it. I fully get that. But I can't see the logic in wanting a refund. Let's go now on to point 2. Should we do the right thing? And that is, should we buy a rod license now? If, rather than just jumping straight on the headline and picking on the messenger, me again, if they'd have actually read it, what they'd have seen in that feature is, I say, rod licenses apply for 12 months, so you don't have to buy one now. And when you do buy one, if you buy one when we start going fishing again, you haven't actually lost anything. Nobody's lost anything if you buy it. However, if you can, if you're in a financial position to, or you want to, or you can, then buy it now. And the reason I think you should buy it now is, over the last few years, what we've seen is a dramatic decline in rod license sales. For whatever reason, it might be evasion, that people just don't think they need one. It might be people dropping out the sport. But what we've seen is a decline in angling. Now, the less people there are, the less important fishing is. And let's wind the clock back a few years. There's 3 million anglers in this country. They can't ban it. There's 2 million anglers in the country. They can't ban that. There's 1.5 million anglers in the country. They can't ban us. They can't attack us. There's 1 million anglers. There's now 876,000 rod license holders now, in comparison with the 3 million or the 4 million. The 4 million there was a long time ago. 876,000. Now, what if we get to 600,000? Well, they can't ban us. And I'd turn around and go, well, hang on a second, because there's 600,000 hunt supporters, and they ban fox hunting.
Yeah.
They ban fox hunting with 600,000 supporters.
You're in a precarious position once you get down to those sort of levels, aren't you? And I think this stems down to, what does the Environment Agency do for me? I've never seen any of them guys. And there's a lot of people who are sort of anti-establishment. They don't want to pay into the Angling Trust because what does the river
gets polluted or something like that? And
what has the Environment Agency ever done for me? What have they done for me? Why should I give them that money? They'd have hammered me if they'd have caught me without a license. So why should I give them the money?
Yeah.
They don't understand that they're supporting their own sport by doing that. Okay, you might not agree with what those organisations do, but fighting them in that way is the wrong way to do it. You've actually still got to support them, but you've got to get in there and get your points across in a different way rather than boycotting them.
Yeah, I think so. I've been massively critical of the Environment Agency. I've been fairly critical of the Environment Agency in fairly high-level meetings around a table with them as well, because it's much better to do it there than just spout off across Facebook. Because what happens is that if you're pissing outside the tent and complaining about people all the time, they just get fed up with it and they'll shut the door, and it doesn't make any difference. So the best thing to do is try and be constructive about what we can and can't do, and try and help out rather than just whinge about it. And,
but on the flip side of that, though, Rob, you are in a privileged position to have access, and a lot of people haven't.
Everybody's got access.
I don't think many people can get into the Environment Agency and sit at a meeting with them.
How did I manage it?
Because you do a lot for the sport, don't you? And you've worked hard to get to that position. I don't think your average Joe can do it.
No, maybe he can't necessarily walk straight up there, but you know what? He can show his support, or he can show his concerns, or he can do something in some way, shape, or form. You know, he can what he can do. And this isn't. Look, I get accused of supporting the Environment Agency and the Angling Trust quite a lot. And there are certain times where I really, really do support them. And I think they have a hard time. And there's other times when, believe me, I'm immensely critical of them, because, you know, I've had situations before now where they've asked me to do something. Well, don't ask me for my opinion if you don't want to hear it. You know, it's as simple as that. I'm only going to tell you my opinion. I'm not going to give you someone else's. You've asked my opinion. This is it. And this is why it's it. And if it disagrees with yours, then try and convince me that I'm wrong, and I'll turn my mind around. I'm not a closed-minded sort of bloke. I'll listen to it. But, you know, if you engage with the Environment Agency, or if you engage with the Angling Trust and pass that information on, then hopefully it will be dealt with. You're doing your bit then, because you're passing it on. You're part of the machine. My issue is when I pass it on and it gets ignored, and you pass it on and it gets ignored, and then suddenly we look at that collective of people that we're all saying there's an issue here and authorities ignoring it. That's when I get really grumpy, because you're clearly not listening to us. And if you're not listening to us, then you've got to do something about it, or we'll have to kick off, because this is the will of the people. And ultimately, you know, not completely, but ultimately they are there to represent us and to assist us. This is the trust. The Environment Agency is slightly different. But, you know, it is a difficult situation. One of the problems I think that angling has is that anglers have a contract. There's something called Privity of Contract in law. And what Privity of Contract means is that if you and I have got a contract with each other, you need to have a number of things. You need an offer, acceptance, consideration, which is finance, intention to create legal capacity, and those are the 4 key areas. So, intention to create legal capacity. Rob, is there any chance when you go and shopping you can get me a loaf of bread? There's no intention to create legal. I'll give you the money for it. There's no intention to create legal capacity.
I'm not going near any shops.
But you know, if you come back without a loaf of bread, I'm not going to sue you, because there was no intention to create legal capacity there. But there's something called Privity of Contract, and what Privity of Contract means is that if you're not party to the contract, you can't have anything to do with it. You can't sue over it. So if me and you have got a contract, Rob might not like it, but it's got bugger all to do with him. He can't sue us because the contract is between me and you. So, you know, we give the Environment Agency money and they're supposed to provide a service. We can't contract with the Environment Agency because they're a government organisation. They don't contract with people. But actually, if they do something, well, we can call them to task, and we can do something called a judicial review, because you should do this. It's your responsibility to do this. If you don't do it, then we can pull you in. There's a review of the Environment Agency regularly. This is how the Environment Agency works. All government departments work exactly the same way. But what we do as angling, we have the Angling Trust that should take them to task. One of the difficulties with that is that the Angling Trust receive money from the Environment Agency to deliver some of the things that the agency used to do. So, you know, it's a little bit mixed. It's a difficult situation. But again, the best thing to do for everybody is just be part of the problem, part of the solution, not the problem. So
buy a rod license, everybody. Join the Angling Trust.
Well, no. Let's go back to it now. If you don't believe the Angling Trust, and if you don't believe in the Angling Trust, you don't need to join it. So don't join it. Simple as that. If you want to help,
at the same time, though, if you felt that strongly that you didn't want to join, or you felt that strongly, you need to tell them why in some way. You need to explain. If you obviously have got the interest of fishing at heart, and you feel that strongly about the Angling Trust, it would be nice to tell them what the problems are, rather than just saying, not going, you know, same as these videos, Rob. I'll use these videos as an example for a lot of people. And you do a video on YouTube as well. You get the odd thumbs down. Yeah. I'd love to know, instead of that bloke leaving a thumbs down comment, I'd love to know the reasons why he's left it, because then maybe you can rectify that in the future. It's the guy not renewing his rod license, or the guy not joining the trust. It's invisible. It doesn't matter. So the trust aren't missing it. But once people start actually explaining the reasons, the trust then have to start listening, or the Environment Agency have to start listening.
Absolutely. You know, the trust in particular do a massive amount of good stuff. They themselves will admit that their marketing department hasn't been great at telling everybody that. Or alternatively, check you out. Hey, look at the difference.
Second one.
Yeah,
hey.
And I ain't even got that. I've got an empty glass.
You've got an empty glass. I'm on my second beer.
We're going to have to hurry up because I've got a Thai red curry waiting for me.
Well, I tell you what then, before we finish, Bob.
All right. Can we just do the very last bit about the rod license, just so because we haven't finished that?
Yeah.
Just where I said buy your rod license. So let's just very quickly conclude this. In the feature, I've said, should we do the right thing? Not do the right thing. Now, if you can, and if you can afford it, buy your rod license, because what that will do is it will keep our rod license numbers up, which ultimately in the long term will help fishing. Now, if you can't, and times are hard and money's hard, and believe me, I know, my income stream is gone completely. Finished, that's it, there is nothing. And one of my difficulties, I don't know when it's going to come back, because just because lockdown finishes doesn't mean to say I'm going to start again. So, you know, income-wise, I'm in a sticky situation at the moment. However, don't put yourself in a difficult situation, but if you can do, I think it's the right thing, as it were, to buy your rod license, because what you're doing is you're not supporting the Environment Agency, you're supporting fishing, because it's a much bigger picture. Part of the money that goes into the Environment Agency comes back out, but also it's keeping our numbers up. If you can't, then don't. You haven't lost anything. Buy it when you want to go. And that's the message I was trying to give across with that there.
Just really quickly, so Joe can get off and have his curry.
Can't wait.
Talk to me just quickly about, while this is all happening, obviously people aren't getting to fisheries, and I've read a couple of times, a chap actually commented on my on one of my videos, there's been quite a bit of poaching on fisheries, because obviously the fisheries are quiet at the minute.
Yes.
Is anything being done, or can anything be done with those sort of things?
Well, you know, again, this is an Environment Agency issue, because if there's regular poaching going on a venue, the Environment Agency should do something about it. But actually, if there is a crime in progress, it's theft, then it's a police matter.
Problem.
So there are guidelines. You can ring the police. Now, the problem that you have is that different police forces are under different amounts of pressure. So, you know, rural crime has gone through the roof. Burglars, quite frankly, just like everybody else, want to go to work. You know, we all want to get to work. We can't. Burglars would love to go to work. Unfortunately, they burgle houses. As a result, everybody's in at the moment. Their job's hard as well. So what do? They nip off down the local areas. And rural crime has gone up too. So not just that, but criminal damage, vandalism. You know, either kids being bored, going out and interfering in things that they shouldn't do, or people just jumping over the fence to have a look at what's going on. There's fence damage, there's theft of fish, etc., etc. So if there is a crime taking place, the best thing to do is ring 999, report it. Now, the work that the VBS have done, and Dilip Sarkar and his lads in particular with FES, which is the Fishery Enforcement Service, they've got the police and also the call handlers to understand how important these things are. In the past, you ring the Environment Agency say, great, we'll have a look at it and we'll see what we can do. And then either nobody does anything or they come out 3 weeks later. So then we went to the police, we did that. You ring the police turn around and go, oh, it's fishing, it's nothing at all to do with us, ring the Environment Agency. No, incorrect. You can use a Home Office guideline number that's been circulated around all of the police forces and all of the call handlers for police, and that is 116/11. 11611. And what that is it's the Home Office reporting number for theft from fisheries. Now, there's something called Operation Traverse, there's something called Operation Leviathan, and there's also something called Operation Clampdown. Now, those 3 operations are nationwide, one of them, and 2 of them are region-wide police operations that all the forces are signed up to. So if you were to ring up and say there is a theft in progress, people are stealing fish from X fishery, it's part of Operation Traverse, Clampdown or Leviathan, depending on your area, and the Home Office reporting code is 116/11. Please take this call seriously, then they should do something about it. If they don't do anything about it, what you need to do is you need to ask for the call handler's details, or ideally just reiterate, this is a police matter, it's a criminal offence, it's happening at the moment, it's a theft issue. We need you to do something. If they then refuse, take their details, find out who they are, what call handling centre, and if they've got a collar number. Take the details, then report it to the VBS through the Angling Trust site. And then what they will do is they will get in touch with the police and say, look, your call handlers aren't taking this seriously. Now, it can't be any clearer than that. There is a system in place. Unfortunately, all systems fall down every now and again, but that is the system that's in place. The unknown of this one is whether or not the police have got resource to be able to do it, because, you know, everybody's stressed. That is as good as we can possibly get. We can't get any better than that. But everybody's stressed. You know, you can ring and report a burglary and the police might say, well, look, we haven't got anybody to come out. Unfortunately, that's a police matter. as opposed to something that we can do. But from a fisheries enforcement point of view, there is a system in place, and it's actually quite a good one.
Right, brilliant.
Okay, Rob, your depth of knowledge is incredible. Can I just say that before we leave?
Well, thank you. Can I say one more very, very short thing just regarding clubs? I know your curry's ready, but this is just the club. You remember, Rob, we were talking about that, just the club assistance. And it'll be 2 minutes, but
touch that, because I think that's really important. So it'd be a nice one to end on.
Come on.
Yeah, and Joe, feel free to come back in with the compliments afterwards, mate. Thank you. There's one other really, really important thing, which again was part of the subject of the live, but unfortunately seemed to get lost a little bit. And that's to do with clubs. As much as we say, right, join buy your environment agency rod license, the other thing I'd say is that if you can do, please, support your local club as well, because we all want to go fishing. And I understand that, you might not be able to go at the moment, but actually a lot of these older clubs, particularly the smaller ones, they've been around for a long time pre-close season. Now, for those of you that were around pre-close season, you'd remember that on March the 14th, your membership would expire and you'd start it up again in June, so you could go fishing from June the 16th. What that meant is that most of the money used to come in during the periods of April and May, and that is when the rents are due. Now, let's take my local club as a prime example. There might be 150 members and it's 30 quid a year. So if they get a full chat bank account full, they're going to get $4,500 in. They've got to pay all the rents, all the other bits and bobs, etc., etc. But let's say that 50% of the people go, well, I'm not joining yet because I can't go fishing yet. Well, that's a massive amount to that small club, and they may not be able to pay their rent. And if the farmer's going to be a bit strict about it, then they lose the lease. They lose the lease, it becomes the Wild West. It becomes the Wild West, gets poached, it's finished, because the club don't charge enough to put money back into it.
Yeah.
So they might lose that fishery. So again, this is another point about doing the right thing, as it were. Let me make this absolutely clear. I'm not asking you to sell your granny. I'm not asking you to put yourself in a difficult financial position. If you can't afford it, absolutely don't do it. And I think sometimes you've really got to spell things out. To me, it would be common sense. If I can afford it, I'll do it. If I can't afford it, I won't do it. That goes without saying. So with these little clubs, they could do with the support, as much support as they can possibly get. Because if they lose members, they might fold. And if they fold, you've lost your fishing. However, and this is one of the great things that the Trust have done, Sport England in particular have stood up. And they've said, right, we understand that small sports clubs, whether they're football clubs, badminton clubs, canoeing clubs or fishing clubs, actually they might be struggling at the moment. So they've got a £20 million fund available for clubs that are struggling to keep going or keep open. They will pay out for things like rent, utility bills, staff costs, insurances, all of these things. Now, it might not be a lot, but it might be the difference between the club keeping going and not going. You can apply for between 300 quid and 10,000 quid. Now, there's 20 million quid up for grabs there. How often do fisheries hear about things like this? How often do fisheries get involved?
We need to make sure that those angling clubs are aware of this fund.
There's help there.
And there's help there.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the key. And you know, I absolutely applaud the Trust on the fact that Jamie Cook, the new lad, was straight in there. Look, if there's any money, we've got to see what we can do to help fisheries. If there's any money, we've got to make sure that fishing is part of it, can receive it. And it can. He was straight on to Sport England, clarifying that point. And Sport England have said, yeah, we'll actually turn it round in between 5 days and 14 days. So it's something that could happen now.
It's fantastic.
So, you know, that is brilliant. The downside, and this is where the Trust fall down, the downside is that what they do is they advertise it on their own website. And they advertise it on their own hub, which is great, but because it's only available to not only available to members, that's wrong, but it's only normally members that are directed to it, all of the other people miss out, which is another reason why I did that live on Friday, because little clubs are very hard to get through to a lot of the time, because a lot of the time they're run by old boys, a lot of the old boys aren't necessarily social media savvy, etc., etc. But if we can get all the members knowing about this, if one member has heard what I said the other day, and rang his club up and gone, you know what, there's a bit of cash available here, and that club's saved, then I'll take all the grief that I get for interfering and trying to be helpful if I can save that fishing club. Yeah. And far too often for me, fishing's forgotten about, fishing's left. We only find out about it afterwards. And as long as I've got breath in my body, and I can be bothered at the moment, quite frankly, I'll carry on pushing it forwards, because we need to be there. When I first went to work with the trust, when I actually worked with them, I had 12 months with them a while ago. I went to a meeting of national governing bodies straight away, and everyone went, "What do you want to go there for?" And I said, "Well, if other national governing bodies are there, we're there. Simple as that. Because if we want to improve our sport and push our pastime, we need to be where everyone else is, because we just miss out far too much, and that's just not acceptable."
No, we need, Rob. It's good that you're banging the drum. We need people banging the drum. Hey, look, dinner's ready. Look,
Come here.
dinner's ready.
Is dinner ready? How can I?
How can
I do?
Fantastic.
What can he do?
He's got to go and have his dinner.
2-year-olds come and give me the marching orders.
Quality.
Rob,
Keep up the good work, Rob.
Bang the drum. Even if the odd person does get the wrong end of the stick, bang the drum. I think that's all you can do.
Don't let them get you down, Rob. Keep it going.
Cheers, mate. It's all done with the best intentions. That's all I can say. So
anyone that's passionate sometimes gets a bit of grief, don't they? But it's the passion that gets us places, isn't it?
Well, there we go. Thank you ever so much for your time, lads, and thanks for the audience. Thanks for everyone watching. Stay safe, look after yourselves, and we will be out on the bank at some stage, hopefully in the not too distant future. If only we knew exactly when that was, but we'll be back. We'll get through it. Time is a great healer. See you soon.
Cheers yourself, Rob. Cheers, Rob. Cheers, Rob. See you, everyone. Subscribe. Bye.
Bye-bye.